My name is Brandon. I'm 27. My mother pointed straight at me in front of the judge, who happened to be her old friend, and said, "This boy only knows how to squander things he doesn't deserve." She was demanding the entire inheritance my grandmother left me in her will. The judge nodded slowly. Her lawyer smiled like the case was already won, and the whole courtroom seemed to hold its breath, certain she had me cornered. They had no idea what was coming. But let me take you back to how it all started. I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina. From the moment I came into this world, my mother, Susan Thompson, blamed me for ruining her political career. She was young, ambitious, climbing the ladder fast, and a pregnancy didn't fit her timeline. She said I destroyed her shot at running for office early, so she handed me over to my grandmother, Dorothy Thompson, and walked away without looking back. Grandma Dorothy raised me alone in her house on the edge of the city. She owned a solid real estate company she'd built from nothing, and she poured everything into teaching me how to work hard, stand up straight, and never let anyone make you feel small. Mom sent checks every month like clockwork cold. Automatic support, but she never showed up for birthdays, holidays, or even a single school event. I grew up knowing her face from TV news clips, not from family dinners. Years passed like that, quiet on the surface, but the hurt built up inside. I never imagined it would explode in a courtroom over Grandma's money. If you've ever felt betrayed by the one person who was supposed to protect you, drop a like right now, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications, because what happened next still shocks me every time I think about it. Stick around. You won't believe how it ends. Years went by in Grandma Dorothy's house on the quiet street in South Charlotte. The place wasn't fancy, just a 2-story brick home with a wide porch and a backyard big enough for a vegetable garden she tended every spring. But it felt solid, like nothing could shake it. Grandma woke up at 6 every morning, rain or shine. She'd make oatmeal with cinnamon, cut up fresh fruit, and sit across from me at the kitchen table while we ate. No phones, no TV, just talking. She asked about school, about friends, about what I wanted to do when I grew up. She listened like my answers actually mattered. By the time I was 8, she started bringing me to the office on weekends. Thompson Properties wasn't a skyscraper downtown. It was a small building near South Park with a sign out front and maybe 10 employees. Grandma ran it herself after Grandpa passed when I was too young to remember him. She'd show me how to read lease agreements, how to spot a good rental property on the MLS listings, how to negotiate without losing your temper. "Numbers don't lie, Brandon," she'd say, tapping a calculator. "But people do. Always check both." I learned to mow the lawn, fix a leaky faucet, paint a room without dripping everywhere. She paid me $5 an hour real money, not allowance, and made me deposit half in a savings account she opened in my name. The rest I could spend on comics or ice cream. But she watched to make sure I didn't blow it all at once. Discipline came with love. She never raised her voice, but when I messed up, she'd sit me down and explain exactly why it hurt the team, meaning her, me, the company, the tenants. Mom's checks arrived like clockwork on the 1st of every month. No note, no card, just a bank transfer and a short memo line, child support. Birthdays were the same. A card would show up in the mail, store-bought, signature printed, sometimes a $20 bill tucked inside. "Happy birthday, Brandon." Mom. That was it. No phone call, no visit. I stopped expecting more after a while. Grandma never spoke badly about her daughter. If I asked why Mom never came, she'd just say, "Kopkan. Your mother has her path. We have ours. Focus on what's in front of you." But I could see the tightness in her jaw when the subject came up. She protected me from the worst of it. School became my other world. I tested into the gifted program in 4th grade and stayed there through middle school. Teachers liked that I showed up prepared and didn't cause trouble. I joined the science club, then track in high school. Cool, nothing spectacular, but I lettered in the 800-meter my junior year. Grandma came to every meet she could, sitting in the bleachers with a thermos of coffee and a blanket even when it was 80 degrees. She'd cheer louder than anyone when I crossed the finish line, no matter my place. Friends started coming over after school. We'd play basketball in the driveway or do homework at the kitchen table while Grandma baked cookies. She knew all their names, asked about their families, remembered who was allergic to peanuts. My best friend, Marcus, used to say. Your grandma's cooler than most parents. I never argued. Around the time I turned 15, I started noticing more about Mom on the news. Susan Thompson had won her first congressional seat in a special election. Clips showed her at rallies, shaking hands, talking about jobs and family values. The irony stung, but I didn't let it show. Grandma would change the channel quietly if it came on during dinner. We didn't discuss it. Then one spring, a package arrived bigger than usual. Inside was a letter from Mom's office, typed on official stationery. It said she was sending Kayla, my half-sister, for a 2-week visit. Kayla was 11 then, 4 years younger than me. I'd seen one photo of her years earlier, blonde hair, big smile, standing next to Mom at some event. She arrived with a suitcase full of designer clothes and a tablet she never put down. At first she was shy, clinging to the front door like she might bolt. Grandma welcomed her the same way she welcomed everyone: warm hug, fresh lemonade, tour of the house. Kayla thawed a little when Grandma showed her how to make biscuits from scratch, but the differences were obvious. Kayla talked about private school in D.C., summer camps in Europe, Mom taking her to fundraisers where celebrities showed up. I talked about fixing fences at rental properties and running laps at the high school track. She called Mom Mommy on the phone every night. I hadn't said the word out loud in years. Those 2 weeks passed fast. Kayla left with a hug for Grandma and a quick bye to me. A month later, another check came, same amount, same memo. No mention of the visit. High school rolled on. I took AP classes, worked summers at the office filing paperwork and showing apartments to tenants. Grandma started trusting me with more responsibility, handling tenant calls, checking repair invoices. She said, "One day this will be yours to run if you want it." I wanted it, not for the money, for her. By senior year, college applications were due. I applied to UNC Charlotte, close enough to stay involved with the business, far enough to feel independent. Grandma helped with the essays, proofreading every draft. When the acceptance letter came, she framed it on the mantel next to my track medals. We didn't talk about Mom much anymore. She was a name on the news, a signature on a check. Grandma was real. Her laugh when I told a bad joke, and hand on my shoulder when things got tough, her quiet pride when I did something right. College started in the fall, and I moved into a dorm on the UNC Charlotte campus, about 20 minutes from Grandma's house. I picked business administration as my major because it made sense for the company. Classes were bigger than high school. Professors talked faster, and nobody knew my name unless I raised my hand. I kept the part-time job at Thompson Properties, 3 afternoons a week plus Saturdays. I handled tenant inquiries, updated listing photos, and shadowed the property managers on site visits. Grandma had promoted me to junior leasing agent the summer before. I wore a polo with the company logo and carried business cards she had printed with my name on them. It felt official. Paychecks came every 2 weeks, enough to cover books, gas, and occasional takeout with friends. Grandma and I set a routine. I'd drive home most Sundays for dinner. She'd cook pot roast or lasagna. We'd sit on the porch afterward, and she'd ask about my professors, my grades, any interesting deals at work. I told her everything. She shared office stories, 2 new tenants moving in, a roof repair that went over budget, a competitor trying to undercut prices on apartments near Uptown. We planned small expansions, maybe buy a duplex in Noda or flip a fixer-upper in Plaza Midwood. She trusted my input more each year. Mom stayed a distant figure on screen. Her face popped up during evening news when Congress was in session talking about infrastructure bills or local North Carolina issues. Sometimes she'd mention Charlotte specifically, and the anchor would cut to a clip of her smiling at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. I watched those segments in silence. Fork paused over my plate. Grandma would glance at the TV, then back at me, and change the channel without a word. I tried reaching out twice during freshman year. First time, I sent an email to her official congressional address, polite, short. Hi, Mom. Just finished my first semester. Grades are good. Hope you're well. In reply, second time tamasto. Around Thanksgiving. I called the D.C. office number listed on her website. A staffer answered, took my name and message, get promised to pass it along. Nothing came back, not even an auto reply. The silence settled heavier than before. In high school, I could pretend she was just busy. In college, with independence staring me in the face, the rejection felt sharper. I stopped trying after that. No more emails, no more calls. I told myself it didn't matter she had her life in Washington. I had mine here. Grandma noticed the change. One Sunday in sophomore year, after I'd stared at my phone too long, she put her hand over mine. You don't have to keep knocking on a door that's locked, Brandon. Some people choose their path, and it doesn't include us. That says everything about them, nothing about you. Her voice was steady. No anger, just fact. I nodded. And we moved on to talking about a new commercial lease we were negotiating. Classes got harder junior year. Real estate finance, property law, market analysis. I pulled all-nighters in the library with coffee and spreadsheets. My GPA held steady at 3.7. Professors started recommending me for internships. One offered a spot at a big firm downtown, but I turned it down. I wanted to stay with Thompson Properties. Grandma had started talking seriously about succession. Over Christmas break that year, we sat in her office after hours. Papers spread across the desk, financial statements, property valuations, tax documents. She pushed a folder toward me. This is the 5-year plan, acquisitions, renovations, maybe a small multifamily project near the university. If you're in, we build it together. I flipped through the pages. Projections showed steady growth, conservative numbers, no risky debt. I'm in, I said. She smiled, the real one, eyes crinkling at the corners. Good, because I don't plan on running this forever. You've earned a seat at the table. We spent the next few months refining the plan. I took on more responsibility, leading showings for high-end rentals, negotiating with contractors, reviewing tenant applications myself. Grandma taught me how to spot red flags in credit reports, how to read body language during negotiations, how to walk away from a bad deal without regret. Mom appeared in the news more frequently, a committee assignment, a floor speech, a photo op with the governor. Each time, the distance grew. I no longer felt the sting the same way, just a dull awareness that she existed in a different world. One evening senior year, I came home late from a closing. Grandma had coffee waiting. We talked about graduation, about me moving back full-time after the ceremony. She looked at me across the table and said quietly, I'm proud of you, Brandon, not just for the grades or the work, for who you've become. I swallowed hard. Couldn't have done it without you, Grandma. She reached over and squeezed my hand. You did the hard part. I just gave you a place to start. That spring. I walked across the stage in the Convocation Center. Grandma sat in the front row, clapping until her palms were red. Marcus and a few friends cheered from the back. No one else from the family came. After the ceremony, we went to dinner at a steakhouse near Ballantyne. She raised her glass of iced tea to the future of Thompson Properties, and to the man who's going to lead it. I clinked my glass against hers. For the first time in years, the absence of Mom didn't feel like a hole. It felt like space I'd already filled. The diagnosis came in winter, right after the holidays. Grandma had been feeling tired for months more than usual fatigue. A routine checkup turned into scans, then biopsies. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. The doctor gave her 6 to 12 months, maybe less. She took the news calmly in the exam room, asked clear questions about treatment options, then thanked him and walked out with me like we'd just discussed a minor repair on one of the properties. We decided against aggressive chemo right away. She wanted quality over quantity. No hospital stays if we could avoid it. So I quit the full-time leasing role I'd started after graduation and moved back into the house permanently. The company could run with the managers for a while. Grandma insisted I handle things from home when needed emails, calls, approvals. But most days were about her. Mornings began early. I'd make her oatmeal the way she liked it, extra cinnamon, a few walnuts on top. She'd sit at the kitchen table in her robe, sipping tea while I prepared her pills. We talked about small things, the weather, a tenant renewing a lease, the birds at the feeder outside the window. She still laughed at my bad jokes, still corrected my grammar when I slipped. Afternoons were for appointments. I drove her to the oncology center in Ballantyne twice a week for symptom management, pain meds, fluids, scans to track progression. The waiting rooms smelled like antiseptic and coffee. I'd sit beside her, holding her hand during the infusions. She never complained. Once, when the nurse asked how she was feeling, Grandma said, "Better than yesterday, thanks to my grandson." I looked away so she wouldn't see my eyes. Evenings were quieter. I'd cook simple meals, chicken soup, baked salmon, mashed potatoes she could keep down. We watched old movies on the living room couch, her feet propped on the ottoman, blanket over her lap. During commercials, she'd tell stories I hadn't heard before, how she started the company with a single duplex after her husband died, how she negotiated her first big loan when banks wouldn't take women seriously. I listened, asked questions, memorized every detail. I kept the house running. Laundry, groceries, cleaning things she used to do without thinking. Neighbors dropped off casseroles. I thanked them at the door and froze what we couldn't eat right away. Marcus came by once a week with takeout and updates from mutual friends. He hugged Grandma gently and told her she looked strong. She smiled and said, "Flattery will get you extra pie next time." Mom's response arrived via text 3 days after I sent the news. "I'm so sorry to hear about Dorothy. Sending prayers. Let me know if you need anything." That was it. No call, no offer to fly down. I stared at the screen for a long minute, then typed back. "She's asking for you." No reply for a week, then another text. "Schedule is packed with committee hearings. I'll try to make time soon." Soon never came. I stopped expecting her to show up. Instead, I focused on the days we had. Grandma and I made a list of things she wanted to finish. Update the company will already done. Visit the beach one last time, too far now. Sort old photo albums. We spent weekends going through boxes in the attic, black and white pictures of her parents. My baby photos she'd kept hidden from me until then. In one, I'm 2 years old, sitting on her lap at a picnic. She touched the edge of the photo and said softly, "You were always mine, even then." Kayla appeared once, about 4 months in. Mom had apparently told her to come check on things. She flew in for a weekend, stayed in the guest room. She brought flowers and a gift card to a spa things Grandma couldn't use anymore. Kayla sat on the edge of the couch, phone in hand most of the time, answering texts from friends back in D.C. When Grandma asked about school or her job, Kayla gave short answers, eyes on the screen. She left early Sunday morning, saying she had a flight. At the door, she hugged Grandma quickly, then turned to me. "Mom says hi," she muttered. I nodded. No one mentioned Mom visiting. The decline accelerated in spring. Grandma slept more, ate less. Pain meds made her drowsy. I'd sit by her bed at night, reading aloud from the newspaper or a book she liked. One evening she reached for my hand and whispered, "Thank you for not leaving me alone. I told her I'd never leave." She squeezed my fingers once, then drifted off. I handled the medical calls, the hospice paperwork, the quiet decisions no one should have to make at 26. Through it all, Mom sent 2 more texts, one asking for updates, one forwarding a link to a cancer support article. Nothing personal, nothing real. Grandma fought quietly until the end. She slipped away on a Tuesday morning in June, sunlight coming through the curtains, her hand in mine. The house felt empty the moment she left. The funeral was held 3 days later at a small chapel in Myers Park. Charlotte's summer heat had already settled in, but the air inside stayed cool and quiet. Rows of wooden pews filled slowly with neighbors, long-time tenants, employees from Thompson properties, and a few distant relatives I barely knew. Everyone spoke in low voices, sharing stories about Grandma's fairness in business and her open-door policy for anyone who needed help. I stood at the front near the casket, greeting people as they came through the line. Marcus arrived early with his family. He clasped my shoulder and said nothing. There wasn't much to say. The service was simple. A pastor read a few passages. A couple of her closest friends shared memories. And I gave the eulogy. I kept it short, talked about how she built everything from scratch, how she taught me to value people over profit, how the house on the south side would never feel the same without her. My voice cracked once, but I finished. Mom didn't come. No call, no flowers, no message of condolence beyond the earlier texts. I checked my phone after the service, nothing new. The absence hung heavier than the humidity outside. A week later, Attorney Joseph Harlan scheduled the reading of the will at his downtown office. I arrived alone, and still in the same dark suit from the funeral. Mr. Harlan was a tall man in his late 60s. Silver hair, calm demeanor. He'd been Grandma's lawyer for 30 years. He greeted me with a firm handshake and led me to the conference room where the documents waited on the polished table. He read the will aloud in a steady voice. Dorothy Thompson had been clear and specific. The company Thompson Properties, including all real estate holdings, bank accounts tied to the business, and equipment was left entirely to me. Personal assets followed the same path, the house in South Charlotte, investments, savings accounts totaling $2 million after taxes and fees, no trusts, no conditions, no shares for anyone else. The document named me as executor and sole beneficiary, Mr. Harlan paused after the last page. She updated this 2 years ago, right after you graduated. Said you were ready. He slid a copy across the table. No, I stared at the pages without really seeing the words. $2 million, the company, the house, everything she'd spent a lifetime building, handed to me without hesitation. I signed the acknowledgement forms, thanked him, and left with the folder under my arm. Driving home, the weight of it started to sink in, not the money, but the responsibility. Grandma had trusted me completely. I couldn't let that go to waste. The call from Mom came that evening. Her voice was sharp, controlled anger. I just spoke with Harlan. He confirmed what I suspected. The entire estate to you. That's not right, Brandon. She was my mother. I have rights. I sat on the porch steps, phone to my ear. The will is clear. Mom, she made her choice. This isn't about choice. It's about fairness. I was her daughter. You were a grandchild she raised because I couldn't at the time. $2 million in a company. That's excessive. I'm consulting my own attorney. We'll challenge it in probate court if we have to. She hung up before I could respond. The next day, an email arrived from her lawyer's office, formal notice of intent to contest the will on grounds of undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. They claimed Grandma had been vulnerable during her illness, that I'd manipulated her into changing the will. No evidence listed yet, just the threat. I forwarded everything to Mr. Harlan. He called back within the hour. Standard opening move in these cases. They want to scare you into settling. But the will is airtight witnessed, notarized. Medical records show she was competent until the end. We'll fight it if it goes forward. I spent the following days pulling together what I needed: copies of Grandma's medical notes from the last 2 years, emails where she discussed the will with Harlan, bank statements showing no unusual transfers. I organized everything in a binder, labeled clearly, no panic, just preparation. Marcus stopped by one night with beer and pizza. We sat on the back deck. "You okay?" he asked. Getting there, Mom's suing, or trying to. He whistled low. Damn, over money, over everything. The company, the house, the cash. She says it's not fair. He shook his head. Fair Grandma made her decision. You were there every day. Where was she? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The house felt different now, quieter, but still hers. I kept her office exactly as she left it, desk organized, calendar on the wall marked with tenant move-ins. I started going through company files in the evenings, making sure leases were current, maintenance schedules on track. It kept my mind occupied. A few weeks later, the formal summons arrived by certified mail, probate court in Mecklenburg County, contest filed by Susan Thompson, grounds undue influence, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty as caregiver. They wanted the will invalidated and the estate redistributed equitably, meaning half to her, half to me at minimum. I read the document twice, then set it aside. No tears, no yelling, just a cold certainty that this was going to court. I called Mr. Harlan the next morning. "I'm ready," I said. He replied simply, "Then we'll meet it head on." The formal complaint landed in my mailbox 2 months after the initial notice. Susan had filed in Mecklenburg County Superior Court, demanding the entire estate, Thompson properties, the house, the $2 million be declared invalid or redistributed to her as the natural heir. Her lawyer's petition accused me of exerting undue influence during Grandma's final months, claiming I isolated her and pressured her into excluding her own daughter. I opened the envelope at the kitchen table, the same one where Grandma and I used to plan leases. The pages were thick, legal jargon dense. I scanned the key parts. Susan sought full ownership of the company and assets, arguing the will didn't reflect Dorothy's true intentions. Attached was an affidavit from Kayla. Kayla's statement was brief but pointed. She swore under oath that I had been lazy and irresponsible growing up, that I never contributed meaningfully to the family business until Grandma got sick, and that I didn't deserve the inheritance because I had taken advantage of her vulnerability. She claimed Grandma had confided in her during that short visit years ago that she regretted leaving everything to me. It was all lies, carefully worded to sound plausible. I set the papers down. My hands weren't shaking. They were steady. But inside, something tightened. Kayla had barely spent time with Grandma. Now she was signing off on this for Mom. Mr. Harlan reviewed the filing the next day. "She's going all in," he said over the phone. "So they want a jury trial if possible. Emotional appeals work better there. But we have strong defenses, medical records proving competency, the updated will with independent witnesses, no evidence of isolation. Your caregiving logs and emails will counter the undue influence claim." I started building the case methodically. First, the emails. I dug through old accounts, ones I hadn't touched in years. There were 3 from Mom, sent when I was 12, 13, 14, short messages. "I'm focusing on my career right now. Dorothy can handle raising you." Another. "Don't blame me for choices I made to get ahead. You were an accident that changed everything." They were cold, but they proved she had willingly stepped away. I printed them, highlighted the dates and phrases, saved copies digitally. Next, photos. Grandma had kept albums in the living room closet. I pulled out the ones showing us together. Over the years, me at 10 helping her plant flowers in the yard. Me at 16 mowing the lawn while she watched from the porch. Me at 22 handing her keys to a new rental property. Dozens of shots smiling. Ordinary moments. No pictures of Susan in any of them after I was 5. I scanned the clearest ones, dated them where possible, and organized them in a folder labeled Relationship with Dorothy. The hardest part was proving the connection between Mom and the assigned judge, Robert Klein. Grandma had mentioned once that Susan and Klein went to law school together at UNC Chapel Hill. I searched public records and congressional disclosures. Susan's financial filings listed Judge Klein as a longtime friend in a 2018 ethics report. A quick search of old Bar Association events showed photos of them on panels together as recently as 3 years ago. I downloaded the images and noted the sources and compiled a timeline of their professional overlap. It wasn't direct proof of bias, but it raised questions about impartiality. Tension built as deadlines approached. Discovery requests came in. Susan wanted my bank statements, company books from the last 5 years, even Grandma's medical charts. I complied through Harlan, redacting only what was protected. In return, we requested her communications with Kayla about the affidavit, her travel records showing she never visited during the illness, and any notes from her meetings with Klein. One afternoon, a process server knocked on the door with the official summons for the first hearing. I signed for it, felt the weight of the envelope. Court date set for late fall, 3 months away. The notice listed witnesses Susan, Kayla, and a psychologist they planned to call to argue vulnerable elder manipulation. I spent evenings reviewing everything again. The house was too quiet now. No Grandma in the kitchen. I worked at her old desk, papers spread out, laptop open. Marcus dropped by sometimes, brought coffee, sat silently while I sorted documents. "You're handling this like a pro," he said once. I shrugged. No choice. The pressure mounted in small ways. Tenants asked questions about ownership changes. I reassured them nothing would affect leases. Company managers wanted clarity on decisions. I kept things steady, approved repairs, signed checks. But at night, alone, the what-ifs crept in. What if the judge favored her? What if Kayla's testimony swayed a jury? What if I lost the house Grandma built? I pushed the thoughts aside and focused on the facts. Harlan scheduled prep sessions. We practiced my testimony calm, factual, no emotion. Stick to dates, documents, actions, he advised. Let the evidence speak. I rehearsed in the mirror, voice even. The hearing would come soon. Mom had drawn the line. Now it was my turn to cross it. The courtroom in the Mecklenburg County Courthouse smelled of polished wood and old paper on the morning of the final hearing. I arrived early, wearing the same dark suit I'd worn to the funeral, carrying only a slim binder of exhibits. Mr. Harlan sat beside me at the plaintiff's table, the defendant's table. I was defending what Grandma had given me. Across the aisle, Mom sat straight-backed in a navy blazer, her lawyer beside her. Kayla was there too, in the gallery row behind, eyes fixed on the floor. Judge Robert Klein entered, robe swishing. He nodded toward Mom brief, familiar before banging the gavel. The bailiff called the case, Susan Thompson versus Brandon Thompson, contest of will. Mom's lawyer opened first undue influence, isolation, manipulation of a dying woman. He painted me as opportunistic, someone who swooped in during illness to secure the fortune. Then Mom took the stand. She spoke clearly, voice steady for the record. She described her career sacrifices, how she entrusted Grandma with raising me because of her demanding schedule. She claimed the will was a last-minute change. influenced by my constant presence. Then she turned, pointed directly at me, finger steady. "This boy only knows how to squander things he doesn't deserve." The words landed exactly as in the hook I'd replayed in my head. A murmur rippled through the sparse gallery. Judge Klein leaned forward slightly, nodded once almost imperceptibly in her direction. Her lawyer smiled, confident. Mom stepped down. Kayla was called next. She repeated the affidavit almost word for word. I was lazy, irresponsible, unworthy. She avoided looking at me. The judge listened attentively, jotting notes. Then it was my turn. I stood without notes except the binder. Harlan had advised, be direct, factual, let documents speak. Your Honor, I have evidence that directly contradicts the claims of undue influence and isolation. I started with the emails projected on the screen for the court. The first one from Mom, dated when I was 12. "I'm focusing on my career right now. Dorothy can handle raising you." The second, a year later. "Don't blame me for choices I made to get ahead. You were an accident that changed everything." The room went quiet as the words appeared. Mom shifted in her seat. Next, the photos. I showed a sequence me and Grandma at different ages, always together, planting flowers, fixing a fence, handing over keys to a new property. No Susan in any after early childhood. These demonstrate the consistent, long-term relationship I had with my grandmother, not isolation. Judge Klein's expression changed. Eyebrows furrowed. Pen paused. Then the connection to him. I presented the congressional disclosure form from 2018, listing Judge Klein as a longtime friend. Photos from Bar Association events, panels they shared. These establish a prior professional and personal relationship between the petitioner and Your Honor, which may affect perceived impartiality. The courtroom fell completely silent. Judge Klein's face drained of color, pale, mouth tight. He glanced at Mom. She stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, no longer pointing or speaking. I closed without drama. My grandmother was competent, clear-minded, and made her decision freely. She left her estate to the person who was there every day. The evidence shows that. I sat down, no applause, no gasps, just heavy quiet. Mom's lawyer tried to recover, objecting to relevance of the friendship photos, but the judge overruled sharply. He asked for brief closing statements. Mom's side repeated emotional appeals. I kept it simple facts over feelings. Judge Klein recessed for 20 minutes. When he returned, he spoke without looking at notes. After reviewing the evidence, including medical records confirming testamentary capacity, the dated communications, photographic proof of relationship, and the lack of any credible counter to the will's validity, I find no basis for undue influence or invalidation. The will stands as written. The contest is denied. Judgment for the defendant. Brandon Thompson. Full ownership of the estate is affirmed. He banged the gavel once. Final. Mom sat frozen. Kayla looked down. No words from either. The lawyer gathered papers quickly. They left without speaking to me. I stayed seated a moment. Binder closed. The room emptied slowly. Mr. Harlan shook my hand. You did what she taught you, stood on facts. Outside the courthouse. Charlotte's afternoon sun was bright. I walked to my car alone. The weight I'd carried for months lifted not with joy, but with quiet certainty. The ruling came down fast after the hearing. Within weeks, reports started surfacing about Susan's involvement in the case. A local Charlotte news station picked up the story, first Congresswoman contesting her mother's will, accusing her own son of manipulation. The piece stayed neutral, but online comments weren't. People started digging. It didn't take long for the Federal Election Commission to notice. Someone, maybe a staffer, maybe a rival, filed a formal complaint. The allegation Susan had leveraged her position and personal connections, including her friendship with Judge Klein, to influence a civil matter tied to her public role. FEC opened an investigation into potential ethics violations and misuse of congressional influence. They subpoenaed records emails between her office and the judge's chambers, travel logs showing meetings in D.C., even campaign finance disclosures that listed shared donors with Klein's circle. The pressure built quietly at first. Then headlines appeared: Congresswoman Thompson faces FEC probe over family estate dispute. Networks ran segments. Her committee assignments were quietly reduced. Donors pulled back. By the next election cycle, the scandal had grown legs. Voters in her district turned away. She lost her seat in a primary upset-wide margin. The FEC report followed months later, violations confirmed, including improper use of official channels for personal gain. Fine, $250,000. No criminal charges, but the damage was permanent. She moved out of her D.C. townhouse into a modest apartment in a suburb outside Raleigh. No staff, no security detail, no public appearances. Last I heard through mutual acquaintances, she lived alone, quiet, isolated, rarely leaving except for groceries. No contact from her since the day she walked out of the courthouse. Kayla followed suit after the ruling. She sent one short text: "I choose Mom. Don't reach out." That was it. No explanation, no goodbye. She blocked my number, unfollowed on social media, vanished from my life the same way Mom had years earlier. I didn't chase. Some doors close for good. I kept the company running. Thompson Properties stayed steady under my name. I hired a new operations manager to handle day-to-day while I focused on growth, acquired 2 small apartment complexes near the university, renovated the older units in South Charlotte, kept rents fair. The $2 million sat mostly untouched. I invested conservatively, lived modestly in Grandma's house. I paid off the mortgage early, updated the kitchen the way she always talked about but never got to do. Life moved forward. I reconnected with old friends, started dating someone from the neighborhood association slow. No rush. Weekends meant yard work, tenant meetings, quiet dinners alone or with Marcus. The house felt full again, not with people, but with purpose. Grandma's office stayed the same. I worked there every day. Her calendar still on the wall as a reminder. I never spoke to Mom or Kayla again. No calls, no letters, no chance encounters. The cut was clean. Whatever ties remained after the courtroom dissolved completely the day the gavel fell. Looking back, I see it clearly now. Greed destroys families faster than anything else. It turns people against their own blood, blinds them to what really matters, leaves them empty even when they win the money. Mom chased legacy, status, control, lost everything that actually counted. Kayla chose sides out of loyalty, or fear or habit, lost a brother in the process. But love and honesty, they build something that lasts. Grandma gave me that foundation, not just the company or the house, but the example. Show up every day. Do the right thing, even when it's hard. Put people before profit. That carried me through the silence, the court, the aftermath. It kept me standing when others fell. I still miss her every day, but I live the way she taught me, and that's enough.